Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at chapter 5 homework here and the exercise portion, practice with feedback in this video. And so here in the first tab we can see it's a lot of matching, etc. So I'm going to let you all work on that. Note that you do have kind of this example formatting tab here that you can refer to if you need help work through the problems, but if you watch this video, we'll work through them together. So that should be hopefully sufficient to get you what you need. Okay, so yeah, let's take a look here at these problems. So we've got a bunch of transactions up here. We've got beginning inventory, purchases, sales, etc. And we're going to need to calculate our cost of goods available for sale, our sales revenue, our units of ending inventory, etc. So a bunch of information here from below, and then use the different methods, specific identification, FIFO, LIFO, and weighted average down here to calculate cost of goods sold and the ending inventory value. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is just go through and input all of the information kind of from above here. We're basically just sort of separating that into the cost of goods available for sale and then the sales portion. So we've got 24 units, basically just pulling this information from above, times $30 per unit. Oh, well, that was weird. And we're just going to multiply those together. Fix the screen there. Okay, and then we had a purchase on the 5th. 36 units for $36, and we'll multiply those together to get the total. And then we had a purchase on the 20th of 60 units, and that was $42. And we'll multiply those, and then we've got 48 units at $48.30. I'm just going to drag my formula down there, multiply those together. Okay, and then let's just sum up the unit totals there. So we have 168 units that we, that's the number of units we had available to sell in total. And the value of those is $6,854.40. And one thing, to keep in mind is the idea of the different layers here, right? We made these different purchases at different prices. And so when we look later at the different methods of figuring out the cost of goods sold, etc., we're going to have to refer back to those layers, basically. So, okay, and then the sales, we had two sale instances here. So we sold 42 units at $90 per unit, and then we sold 78 units and the same sales price there, 120 total. And the total revenue then from these sales would be $10,080. Okay, and then this is just kind of asking us how many ending inventory units are there. So there was 168 that we could have sold. We did sell 120. So we've got 48 units in ending inventory. And then this first, so now we're going to go through and figure out ending inventory and COGS from the different methods. So specific identification is kind of the easiest one because we don't have to do as much of the layers and then analyzing first in, first out, or last in, first out, etc. So it basically just tells us if we know that there's 48 units in ending inventory, a fourth of those are from the February 5th purchase here, and 3/4 are from the February 25th purchase. Then we just need to go in and say, and it's, so 1/4 times 48, and that's one, piece or one group of the ending inventory, and then 3/4 we can do 0.75 times 48. That would be the second And yeah, I guess I'll do it the same way there. That would be the second portion. And then we're going to add in the cost from those specific units. So again, it was from the 5th, 4th, or from the February 5th purchase, so at $36. So we just link up to that. And then 3/4 are from the February 25th transaction, so we'll link into there. So we're saying 1/4 of the total 48 ending units, 1/4 is 0.25, are at $36, and then 3/4 of the 48 total is at the 48.30. So if we multiply all that out, then the inventory value becomes $2,170.80, and then we can figure out the cost of goods sold just by taking the cost of goods available for sale less what's still in ending inventory, and the sum of these two have to add up what could have been sold, right? So the sum of those two amounts there, we can see 68.54.40. This is left in inventory, and then this is what went out the door as sale. Okay, so now let's move on to the next methodology type, and that will be FIFO. And so now that we're moving into FIFO, and then we'll see this with LIFO and weighted average, we need to consider the timing of our purchases and the different layers, like I mentioned, when it comes to figuring out our cost of goods sold, etc. So beginning inventory, again, we've just got 24 units at $30 per unit. And we're going to multiply those together. And then we make a purchase. Again, that was 36 units at $36. Same thing, multiply those together. And with FIFO and LIFO and with weighted average, the thing we need to consider is anytime we have a sale, that's where we need to know how much we have in each layer at different costs, etc. And so when we look here, and we can say the sale on February 15th of 42 units at $90. So that's what the sales price is. So when we want to figure out the cost, that's where we need to come into our layers here. And so we have 60 available to sell. We sold 42. And so we're going to not sell everything we have, but 42 out of 60. And so the first layer of 24 units will be completely gone. And then the second layer here, so we want to get to 42 total. So I'm just going to say equals 42 minus 24, because that's what we already had from above. So that's 18, and that gives us 42 total, which is with the amount that we sold. And those are going to be at $36 per unit. And I'm just going to drag my formula down and multiply those together, and then sum up the cost. And again, this is the whole idea of the first in, first out, is that we're going to that first layer first. If we were doing LIFO, then we would have taken 36 units first, and then 6 units from the 20 from this layer, because we'd be working backwards or this direction from latest purchased to more older purchase. But we're doing FIFO, so we're saying the oldest purchase will be the first that we account for when it comes to the costs. Okay, so with that said, now we have to figure out our ending inventory. So we have 18 units left. So half of them we sold, half of this 36 we sold, half are still in our inventory, sitting out in our warehouse or whatever. And so the cost there is $648. Okay, and then we have 2 more purchases. So on the 20th, we purchased 60 units at $42, and that was about 20. Let's do the formula. And then we purchased on the 25th 48 units at $48.30. Formula updated there. And so now after these 2 additional purchases, we have 126 units available for sale and 5,486.40 available for sale. So that carries over, the 18 layer carries over from this purchase period. And then so that's going to be the first to go the next time we have a sale, which is now on the 28th. So we're going to sell 78 total. So I'm just going to put the total first this time. And then I'm going to say we had 18 units that we have available from this layer at $36 per unit. So we'll multiply those together. And then we've got 60 units here that we need to get us to equal to the 78. And we've got exactly 60 units in this layer here. So we're going to completely sell off that layer. So the cost of goods sold on the second, then this February 20th transaction was $3,168. We had 126. We sold the 78, so that's both of these first layers are gone, and this we didn't touch this last purchase layer of $48.30. So that's what's going to be in our ending inventory, and then our cost of goods sold is going to be this cost of goods sold plus that one. So you have to add both of them up to get total cost of goods sold, because there was two different sales transactions with different layers. And that basically solves for our problem there. So that's FIFO. Now let's come through and look at LIFO. And so I'm just going to, the first two parts are the same, so I'm just going to copy these down. Oh, it's already formatted. That's kind of nice. Okay. It's already got some of the stuff built into it. That's funny. Great. Okay, so there's that. Then we have the sale. But like I mentioned before, with LIFO, we're going to go last in, first out. So FIFO, we started with this layer, but LIFO, we're kind of working backwards, if you will. And so first I'm going to do the 36 layer. So that layer's gone. Now we still need 42. It's the same. And so the difference that we need is 6 more units to get to our total 42 sold. And those 6 units are going to come from this layer here. And so now when we have the 18 units, those 18 units are going to come from this first layer, whereas in the last problem, those 18 units came from this second layer. Now they're coming from this layer because we are doing LIFO instead of FIFO. Okay, and then we've got a couple purchases. Again, I'm just going to copy these because there's nothing different when it comes to the purchases or anything like that between LIFO and FIFO. But when it comes again to the sales, now we need to sell. We had sold 78 on February 28th. And so our total is going to be 78. We're going to start with the last layer we purchased first, so 48 units at $48.30. So that layer is gone. Sold through that one, and then we're going to need the difference. So we need 30 more units, and those units are going to come from this layer there, and then that will leave us with 60 minus the 30, 30 units at $42, and then we'll have 18 units at $30 for the older portion there. And what am I missing there? Something's off, but let's see if we can get this to all go. Okay, so there's that. Boom, 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 boom. So we have that one. Okay, I might need to, I think I just got to put this in differently. It's a little goofy, but it's fine. Okay, so we need to show the layers in the right order to get this problem to get rid of the X's there. Same result, 1800, but we needed to put the first layer first and then this second layer second. So that's fine. When we're doing the cost of goods sold part, where we're going to the last in, first out, that's where we're putting the last on the top. But here on the inventory, we're putting it just with the same here. The oldest purchased is first. So that's LIFO. So hopefully you can kind of see the difference there between those two. It's that's kind of the thing. And yeah, let's go on to our weighted average method. Okay, so for weighted average method, as we talked about in class, the purchases or the sales and cost of goods sold calculations are a little simpler, but the um, kind of the determination of weighted average at any point, so the purchases gets a little more tricky. But let's begin here. So we can carry this same information down to get our weighted average totals. And then we're gonna now, but like I said, now we have a weighted average. We have 60 units divided. We have 2016. Well, let's do it in our. So the cost, because we're using weighted average method, is going to be 2016 divided by 60. So 33.6, 42 units, and then we end up with 18 units left at 3360. So 604.80. So again, it's just taking the average, the weighted average of these costs per unit. So we don't end up with different layers the same way. It's a little, when we do the sales, we just use that average. Okay, and then we have the same purchase of, two more purchasing events here. And then we're going to have a new weighted average, which is this total divided by the number of units. And we're going to have 78 units sold again. Where am I? Here we go. And instead of doing, different layers and last in, first out, or first in, first out, etc., we're just, again, going to take our total costs divided by the number of units to get a per unit average of 43.20. And that gets us a cost of goods sold amount. Sorry, that keeps zooming up every time I hit enter. But same thing here. We had 126 before we had this sale. So now we have 48 left over. And we're going to be using this same average cost that we have here, which is just started out saying the total cost divided by the number of units. And that becomes our ending inventory. So really, it's just a matter of every time, excuse me, you come to a sales event transaction, you're just taking the amount of cost you would use under the weighted average is just the total number of units, or the total cost of different purchases divided by the number of units, essentially. And that gets us the totals there. So good stuff. Okay, so let's do another similar problem here. Practice this again. So we're going to do the same thing, essentially, very, very similar. So let's work through it. So I'm just putting in the information from above here. I'm just going to drag this formula down. Oh, it didn't work. I thought it was a formula. I think I just typed that in. Oops. Let's do the formula. And then we just put in our numbers. Add all those. Add those. So our total amount of cost of goods sold that we had to sell, that we had available to sell, 455 units. This is the total cost of those units. And we had two sales, one on the 21st, 285 units, and then one on the 27th of 100 units. Two different sales prices. And I'm just going to copy this formula here, paste that in, and sum those up. So our ending inventory then becomes cost of goods. And units. Sorry, yeah, wait, just the units. So we just need 455 minus 385, 70 units left over. And okay, so we're going to say of the 70 units here, half are from March 10th purchase, so this one, and then half are from, or this one, we could link to that, and then the other half are from March 24th, so half from that. So we can just do a pretty simple, I will do it like this just because it tells us times 0.5, so half of 35, but the first ones come from this purchase. Oh, whoops, I gotta do this whole thing again. Copy that just so I've got the general breakdown there. And then the second part, so the first one is half coming from F15 or this purchase, and then half with the cost here from the 24th. And then the cost of goods sold is just the difference between what we had available to sell versus what's left over. And so our cost of goods sold using the specific identification method would be 2,291. Alrighty, so I'm going to link up to this time. A little easier, maybe. And then our links we can just drag down. Okay, then again, we're doing FIFO here. So on the 21st, we sold, how many did we sell? We sold 285. So I'm going to link the total in to 285. So from the different layers, it's got to add up to 285. So we had 100 from that first layer. We have 75 from the second layer. And then we need the difference. I'm just going to do it with a formula. 110 to get us to 285. So that all adds up to 285 now. I just did that by taking the ending total minus what we already had above. And then that last layer is at 620. So there's our totals. And then we have 325 minus 285, so 40. And we're coming from, these 40 leftovers are from that last layer. This is FIFO, right? So we started with the first layers. And then we had a purchase that we did of 130 units, 660, and out. Something weird with that formula. Okay, and then we had a sale of, again, I'm going to link the total, 100 units sold. And we're doing FIFO again, so we're taking from the oldest layer first. The first layer in is the first layer out. And then we need the difference, which, you can do that math pretty easy, 60, but do a formula for it. So 68 units are going to come from that layer. So there's going to be 70 units left over. It's from this last layer. And then we add together our cost of goods sold from the two different sales transactions, and we get our totals. So total expense, total we have left in inventory. And again, if you add those together, it's 2726.75, which was the total cost of goods available for sale. So whatever you have available for sale, at the end of the month, it either has to still be available for sale as inventory in our warehouse and on our balance sheet, or it's gone out the door because of a sale and it's an expense, cost of goods sold. That'll go on our income statement. Okay, now let's do LIFO, so very similar. For the first part, we're just going to take, oh, that's funny. All right, I'm just going to link up to there just to make it a little easier. Okay, so same, beginning, because we haven't had a sale yet, but when the sale comes, now we're going to start with the last layer first. So still the same 285, but we're going to start with the 150 layer. So that layer is now gone. And then we're just going to need, how many do we need? 150 plus 75. That's 225. Yeah, so we're going to get rid of the second layer as well. And now we're going to need 60 from this first layer. And again, you kind of see the difference here. We're starting with this layer, this last layer first. And when we were doing FIFO, we started with the 100. and we were left with some from this layer. But with LIFO, we're starting from this layer, and we're ending up with some from that first layer left over. So we have 40 units left over, same as before, but like I just said, those are from this. Here we had the 40 units at 620, but here with LIFO, we've got the 40 units at $5 per unit. Okay, and then we purchase 130 more. Same as FIFO, but then when we have the sale, how many are we doing? 100. Okay, so we're doing 100 units. We don't even need to do an addition because all those units can just come from this last layer. And we've got, oh, here we have, well, we do have layers left over. So we have the 40 units completely untouched. So that whole thing is still there. But then we've got only 30 left because we took 100 from this layer here when we sold that. So we have 30 at 660. And then again, let's add up our total cost of goods sold. So there you see a little different amounts because we started with different, FIFO versus LIFO. Okay, now let's go into our our weighted average method. Okie doke, and let's figure out. No, okay, so now same thing. We're selling 285, but we're not going to pull from layers because we're doing weighted average. So we just take, all we need to do is take the total cost divided by the number of units at that point, and then the leftovers will be at that same average cost. So this is the same as above. We just bring those in. We have a new average down here, which we can calculate that and use it here for our. Oh, that's what happens. Okay, 100 units. 640. Add the two together. Oh my gosh. We've got 70 units left. I'm not going to hit enter. So we're using that same. I have to. Tab works. So same average cost that we used for the sale is what's left in inventory. So $448 total. And again, that was just by taking the 1088 divided by 170, and we use that both for the sale and we use that for the ending inventory. So again, a little different ending values, just due to the different methodologies. All right, let's look at tab 5. So this just gets to what's shipping point, FOB shipping point versus destination. And if something is FOB shipping point, that means that the ownership transfers at the time that it's shipped. But if it's in FOB destination, then that means that ownership will transfer to the buyer only when it reaches the destination. So I'll let you all answer those questions. They're pretty easy questions there. So just drop down and select there. So let's see, we've got one more problem, and yeah, let's do it again. I think it's worthwhile to keep walking through these for y'all. Well, this one is so similar. You know what? I'm going to bypass doing that one. Since we have these other two examples, I'll let you all refer back to those if you need help. So it's good practice to do it on your own. So, okay, let's take a look at this problem, however. So this is a little different methodology or presentation style here. So we want to see what's the cost of ending inventory and the cost of goods sold. Okay, so I think we're doing a very similar thing that we did on these first problems here, it looks like, but we're kind of not given the full template like we have there to do it. So let's work through these problems here. So ending inventory here is 240. right away. Okay, so now then we have a sale of 40 units at $8, so $320 sale. And so the cost of goods sold is, we only have this. Oh, we're doing weighted average. Sorry. So our cost then will be 240 divided by 60 units. So $240 divided by 60 units gets us our weighted average cost. And we sold 40 units, I think. Yeah, 40 there. And then we can use, I'm going to copy this formula. But instead of times 40, we have 20 units left over. So we had 60 total. The cost out using weighted average was 240 divided by the 60. And then 40 of those units were sold and 24. So you can see it kind of add the 180 and the 60 add together to what was in inventory before we had the sale there. So that's kind of a check figure for us. Okay, so then on the 10th, we bought $400 more of inventory. So we started with 80, we added 400, so 480. And then we had another sales transaction of 40 units again. So I'm going to steal this formula, but instead of the 240 divided by 60 units, we have 480 is the total cost now, divided by, we need to know how many units we have. So we had 20 units left here, and we bought 80 more, so we have 100 units. Wait, we had 100 units total. Sorry. We had 100 units total, and we sold 40. Oh, yeah, no, I'm doing that right. So the average cost is using the divided by 100, but the 40 units is the amount we sold. So and then we have 60 units left over because there was 100 total. 40 were sold, 60 are still in inventory. Okay, on the 24th, we added another 200 units at $5.32. So plus this plus 1064. And we can do kind of this similar thing here. So now we had 60 units left over after that last sale, 60 units. Whoops, got rid of my phone. Oh, geez. So, okay, we had 60 units left over, and then we bought 200. So we have 260. So this 1352 represents 260 units. 200 we bought there, 60 were left over from previous. So 260 units total. And this would be the 1352. And how many did we sell? We sold 220. And that means that if we sold 220, we had 260 total. That means that there should be 40 left over. Like that. And yeah, and then we just add the totals of cost of goods sold. And those are our ending numbers. So just making us kind of think a little bit more on these. So let's do FIFO. So again, inventory is the same as at the beginning. We sold 40 units here. We're not doing any weighted average or anything. It's just 40 at $4. And I'm just going to do the ending inventory minus the cost of goods sold instead of doing a formula to multiply it through, because we know at this point that the total of the two, either cost of goods sold and inventory, has to add up to what the total available inventory was before. Okay, so we have 80 units there, but if we're adding in, so we're going to have 80 and then we added in 400, so that's the 400 there. And then if we sell, that was 40 units, so we sell, where are we at here? That was the 10th. Okay, so on the 17th, we're selling 40 units. And again, FIFO is going to go back as far as we can. And that would be this one. So there's 20 units that we had 60, we sold 40. So there's 20 units at $4. 20 units times 4 is the first layer, and we're selling 40 total. So then we have 20 times 5. And then again, we can just take 480 minus 180. Okay, on the 24th, we add another 1064. It starts to get a little tricky when you can't see all the layers. But we sold out of the first layer here because we had 40 and 20, and that was 60 total. We added 80. 20 of those are gone, so we have 60 left over. So we're going to have, I'm going to steal this formula. We've got 60 at $5. Because that was 80 that's from this layer. And then we had this layer. So we have we need to get to 220 total. So 220 minus, okay, so 220 minus 60, because 220 is the total amount sold. 60 came from this layer that's gone. And then the rest of that 220 minus 60, which is 160, that will come from this layer at 5.32. And then again, we can just take the difference to get our total, and we'll add all these up. Oh, that does kind of hurt your brain trying to do it like this, because really what we're trying to do is, keep track of the layers just without seeing it. So I feel your pain on doing these kind of. This is one. It's almost good to have some scratch paper off to the side to do this. But anyway, okay. So for the first transaction with LIFO, it's going to be exactly the same. And what I'm going to actually do is take a lot of the same formulas I did from FIFO. So the FIFO one doesn't matter. LIFO and FIFO is the same because at this sale point on the 8th, we only had one layer. But here we can see we've got 2 layers. So what we can do is, let's see. Okay, so we had 40 units gone. So 20 is left over here. Then we bought 40. Oh, no, sorry. We bought 80. And then we are selling 40. So the whole 40 sold is going to come from this layer. So it's all at $5. 40. I'm just going to do it like this. 20 times 4. Let's do it better. 40 times 5. And then the same. This equals just what we had available for sale minus the amount sold. Okay, and then let's just take the same formula. So we add the 280 into the 1344. Okay, and the last. So now let's try and just think about this first. We've got 20 units left in this layer. We've got 40 left here because we sold 40 on the last one. And then we added 200 more. And then we're selling 220. So 200 are going to come from this layer, and then 20 are going to come from that layer. I think that will do it for us. Okay, so 200 is at that last purchase layer, 5.32, and then 20 is going to come from the layer before of this one at $5. So I think that should do it. Copy this formula down and then add all 3. All right, now gets rid of our x's. A little bit of a brain bender, and yeah, having this, just doing it this way really goes to show you why having this written out this way is really helpful. At least having, some sort of notes that allow you to see the different layers a little more clearly is quite valuable. All right, so let's move on to the last tab, and we do have an extra credit tab, I guess. I'll leave that one for you all. It's very much the same as our earlier calculations. So let's do our tab here with the lower of cost or market, and applying that separately and as a whole. So the way that we're going to want to do this then as a whole, we can just take the totals. So here's cost, here's market, right? What we're saying is if we have inventory that is overvalued, essentially, if the market value to replace this inventory is now dropped, we, from a conservative perspective, have to drop the value of our assets. We don't ever write the value up if the value goes up, but we do write it down if the value goes down. So as a whole, the total, let's just look at the two things here first. So total cost would be 30.5. Oh, I got to multiply these. So the total cost, and that's times, how many units is that? Oh, you know what? I got to do it this way. 14 times 600 plus 1200 times 6.5 plus 900 times 10. So that's the total cost for all these quantities and all that. So you'd have 25. Oh, again, that's funny. It gave us, that was the right answer. But I wanted to show, so it is, cost is lower here as a whole, but I want to show if we did the market, then we would be saying the same amounts, but different values. So $10, $12, $8, and $11, which is all coming from here. So the market was $26,700 if we use market, but the cost that we purchased it as a whole is $25,000. So the cost is still lower than market, and we don't have to write down our inventory. Now, if we do them separately, we got to look at each individual item on its own. And so, again, this is kind of where having scratch paper comes in handy, but let's just take a look. And so we need to look at each individual one. So I guess we can just, sorry, let me undo that. It's pretty easy to see. Okay, market is lower for Heineken. Cost is lower for Applestrop. And cost is lower for Hagelslag. So the only one we need to write down is the Heineken. So instead of the $14 cost, we're going to use the 12. And that brings us down to 24,000. And we got to write, we'd have to reduce our inventory by $1,200, which is fully at cost of what we paid. We would originally say, oh, our inventory asset on our balance sheet is $25,200. But if we do this analysis and realize, oh, we need to write this down to a lower, to market value because the price has dropped, then we adjust that value down and recognize an expense for the difference. Okay, let's see. Inventory turnover, days sales and inventory, and gross margin ratio. So I got to remember these formulas real quick. I won't ask you specifically to memorize on the exam necessarily. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say that. If I do ask you to memorize, I will have that on our study guide. I got to take a look at the exam and see if there's a ratio questions like this that it will ask you for that. So let's just take a look here. Okay, so for our inventory turnover ratio, again, that's going to tell us how fast our inventory is turning over, or how many, like if you have 100 inventory items, this is going to tell you how many times did you sell all of those inventory items, and if maybe that was more than once, throughout the year, essentially. And so to calculate that, we need to take our cost of goods sold divided by our average inventory, and our average inventory is just going to be our beginning plus ending divided by 2, and last year's ending is basically this year's beginning. So we have, I'm going to do an extra parentheses there, 64 plus 96 divided by 2, so 10, and then we can just drag this formula over, I think. Oh no, sorry, it's not linked. We'll start with those being good, and let's just fill in the right numbers. So 1,200 from their company, and 256 and 224, and then here we've got again it's 800, same. Okay, that's great. And then 48 for low company and 32 for that. Okay, and then days sales and inventory, we just take this, we take 365 divided by the inventory turnover. So if our inventory is turning over 10 times, that means that we expect to have 36 days of inventory on hand. So if sales continue at the pace that they have been historically, then we will run out of inventory in about 36 and a half days for the first company, 73 days for the second, and 18.25. So this is important when it comes to purchasing, making sure we have enough inventory on hand, essentially. And then gross margin ratio, remember, is our sales minus our cost of goods sold, right? That gets us our gross profit, and our gross margin ratio then is taking that. So that would be this. If we took 16, that'd be what, 800. So 800 would be our gross profit, and then we divide 800 by total sales. I'm going to use that same formula basically and just update the numbers. So we had 2,000 in sales for their company minus 1,200, and then divide that out. So 40%. And then what do we have? Sales of 1,000. COGS is the same. And then what do we need? Sales here. So 1,000. Cool. So it tells us some interesting information. Like I said, you can use this for kind of supply chain management type stuff. And gross margin ratio. We get to see how much we're keeping after paying for our goods between these 3 companies. All right, and like I said, I'll leave this extra credit one for you all to do. I think I might actually use these figures in class for kind of an in-class problem for us to go through and complete. So if you're in class and you do the in-class assignment with these figures, just take that as long as that's still applicable. The one thing actually that won't exactly work out. Sorry, I just remembered that these numbers update for everybody a little differently. But you can refer back to the same process that we did in these other problems, and it's going to be basically the same kind of methodology. So good luck getting through those. Hopefully this was valuable for you all. I know it can be a little tricky, but just kind of a puzzle and learning the different methods, etc. And then writing it out, you can really see how helpful that is versus trying to figure this stuff out without extra notes and whatnot. So understanding how to do this work, even if you don't exactly do it in the same format, but being able to see the different layers and figure this out is important. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate you following along, and I will see you all in the next video or in class.